Just like a spark that's breaking. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we're gonna light it up. Tonight, we're gonna light it up, baby. Tonight, we're gonna light it up. Just like the sunrise, we're gonna light it up. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we're gonna light it up. Tonight, we're gonna light it up.
Oh, live show, guys. You got to love it. It never fails. I even tested everything before we went live tonight and I still had issues. So, anyway, welcome to the HVAC Guide live show where we talk about all things HVAC that no one else is talking about. Answering your questions live. Please know sometimes we are joined by other pros in the chat who might know answers to questions that I don't. And finally, we have breakout segments where we go over funny clips, industry news, and goofy inventions. But not only that, tonight we have a special guest. When I started making YouTube videos and this live show, my biggest goal was to give folks access to see and be a part of things they can get nowhere else. And tonight is another great example of that. But before we bring on Jake, let's take a moment to pay the bills and thank the sponsor of the show. I wanted to take a quick break from the video and thank the sponsor of this video, AeroSeal. Leaky ductwork is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, energy wasters in most homes in the United States. And my favorite way of fixing that problem is AeroSeal. They'll come into your home, they'll test your ductwork and how leaky it is, they'll seal all the ductwork with a machine, and then they'll test it again and make sure that you got what you paid for. Customers have reported a significant savings on their energy bills after using AeroSeal. I'll put a link down in the description of this video. Thanks again to AeroSeal, and now let's get back to the video. Tonight's guest is a licensed radon mitigation expert. He's a founding partner and manager at a leading company for mitigation in St. Louis, Missouri called AirSense Environmental. He handles the field operation aspects for the radon mitigation group and in the near future, the indoor air quality group. Everyone, please welcome Jake Lusby. Oh, my stupid computer. Let's go, Jake. They were outside cheering for you, even with all the mess ups tonight.
I seen your stuff was kind of bouncing in and forth. I thought maybe that clip ended up in there incidentally, so I was laughing. That's funny.
No, man, that's the people lined up. That's the one clip that was not a mistake tonight so far. So
I got you. Yeah. Well, thanks
how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, going good, man. I appreciate you having us on. It always amazes me, how social media connects people, right? Like before your and I email introduction, like I wouldn't have known you from Adam or you me, and so it's always there's a lot of negative side effects of social media and all those things, but it always amazes me how it brings people together. So happy to be here, man, and I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. I got to tell you, this has been you're like an answer to, I don't know if we want to say prayers or requests, but we've had multiple shows where which, by the way, if you're watching in the chat, just go ahead and say hello. Hello to Ryan. But we've had multiple shows where the topic of radon has come up. It's a hot topic. Yeah. It's concerning for a lot of folks. I think there are probably parts of the country where it's a bigger concern than others, but I'm sure we're going to dive into this deeper. But let's start out with a bird's eye view, a 30,000 foot view of the issue at hand and how concerned people should be.
Yeah, so radon is an odorless, tasteless, invisible gas that occurs from the decay of uranium in the ground. And so uranium is a naturally occurring element all over the world, but more specifically in the United States. Obviously, radon's been detected in all 50 states, and believe it or not, Alaska is one of the highest reporting radon levels of any of the states. So, when uranium decays, there's a decay chain, and when it gets so far, radon is one of those things. And so when that radon begins to decay, it puts off what's called radon decay particles, and that is lead, polonium 214, and there's one more. There's two. So there's 214, 218, and there's another P one that I can never remember. But those get in and they float. So they float infinitely. They don't really settle or sink or rise. They just kind of float there at a molecular level. And as those things float around, you breathe them in. And so when you breathe those in, they actually attach to lung tissue. And as that radon element continues to decay, it puts off tiny, like, microbursts of energy. and that's what actually causes the lung tissue damage. So there's a lot of like comparisons out there. So if you live in a house with a 4.0, which is measured in picocuries per liter, if you're in Canada, it's measured in becquerels per meter cube. But when you breathe those in, so living in a home with a 4.0 is the equivalent in lung tissue damage of smoking about 4 or 8 cigarettes a day. And so I'm trying to, there's another pretty interesting comparison. And so a lot of people, like if you go get an x-ray, right, they put the thing on you and they're all they're all protected and all that. And they say, I can't remember the number, but they say there's only so many x-rays you're supposed to have in a year's time. And if you live in a home with an elevated radon level, you're experiencing hundreds of times the radon exposure than you would from a single x-ray. And so the problem is, right, it's odorless, it's tasteless, it's invisible. Most people don't think about it until they go to sell their home. And that's when most people test for radon during a real estate transaction. And that's really, in Illinois especially, that's where radon really started to gain some traction. Was it became so prevalent in real estate transactions that people were like, well, my aunt sold their home and they had to test for radon. I've never even heard of radon. I'm going to test for it. So as it becomes more and more prevalent in those real estate transactions, it's really taken off into the consumer market as well. And we get, I would say we're probably right now somewhere between 70-30, 60-40 doing real estate involved work and concerned homeowners that call us and they've heard about it from somewhere or another. And they either A, want to have a test, or B, they bought like a home monitor and they've seen that their levels are elevated and they're ready to talk about mitigation.
So there are, I guess there's home monitors, but
Yep.
are those just as good, or is there a quality? Like, do you have one that's, say, better or more sensitive?
Yeah, so we carry a couple for like diagnostic use. Say we've got a home, and we may talk about it later, but older homes prior to 1980 rarely have gravel underneath the substrate, underneath that concrete, and that makes mitigation pretty tough. It's kind of like taking a shop vac and sticking it in the mud, right? The effect that you're going to get is very little output. And so the way that we combat that is a lot of times we'll use multiple suction points throughout a basement just to increase the surface area that we're trying to draw through. And we might get up to 3 suction points, and we may have flow that is kind of on the line, right? I'm always shooting for around 60 CFM of air coming through the pipe at a minimum. And maybe we're up to 3 suction points. We're trying not to put any more pipe or holes in the ground, but maybe we're at 50, and we'll use some radon monitors as a diagnostic to see if those levels are dropping. We use radon eye, so long way to get to the answer there, but we use radon eye. We've also had pretty good luck with EcoSense, which they make an Eco Cube, and then there's also Air Things. All of our We also do testing, and there's quite a bit of regulation on testing, and so the monitors that we use for testing, they're around $700 or $800. They do a 48-hour exposure. Those are Air Things, and so those are like the best Air Things monitor you can buy. Again, they're like $700-800. But Air Things makes some home monitors. And so any of those brands, Radon Eye, Air Things, EcoSense, all good. The Radon Eye is the most expensive. I think those are around 200. And then I think EcoSense has some that you can get into for around 130.
Okay. Larry's been on our show before. He's actually one of the guys that goes in and does the home inspections.
Yeah.
And he said 40% of our tests fails. He's in
Yep.
Michigan.
Yeah,
Um,
Michigan's big. We see a lot. Like if you come across any like kind of the hot Instagram profiles from radon mitigators, a lot of them come out of Michigan, it seems like. So Michigan's definitely a hotbed. They estimate, based off of data that they've taken from all the measurement professionals in Illinois, they estimate 50% of the homes, if you tested every one in Illinois, would come back high.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And we've got another really important comment that came through. Super Cyan Lusby says, "Hey, Dad."
Yeah,
So,
I'm like my kids. I'm like YouTube famous right now. So this is the pinnacle of achievements in relation to my kid right now.
you just became way more cooler.
Yes.
You're the cool
Yes.
dad. I like
He
it.
said,
I like
"How many subscribers does this guy have?"
it. How chubby is this guy?
Yeah.
So Ryan says that he just had a new radon fan installed, trying to find the right balance of radon mitigation and noise from the fan. What brand of radon fan do you install?
Well, actually, so interestingly enough, we started with Festa. That was just due to the supplier that we got connected with. And so it was funny. The supplier called us one day and he goes, "Hey, we started you out on net 30 terms, and you guys have grown to the point that you're carrying a debt we're not really comfortable with. You guys are always paying on time. It's just more than we feel okay with floating." And so the guy at Win Air, I don't know, you guys Win Supply, Win Air, where you're at?
I
Win
think I've heard of it.
WINN. They're pretty big over here in Illinois, St. Louis Metro, but they had a new salesman. This guy's been forever trying to get me to try April Air. So April Air introduced their line of radon fans. And so we buy all of our electrical supply from them, and we're on net 30, obviously. And so I called Brian. I said, "Brian, hey, I got an opportunity for you." I said, "Get me in touch with the April Air guy. I want to talk to the product rep. I want to learn about the product. I'm kind of manic obsessive, right? Like, so I want to know everything about what it is I'm getting ready to put in somebody's house." And so as of late, we use April Air. April Air is a good fan. They're made by Spruce Environmental Technologies. I had a 30-minute conversation today with the product rep from April Air. But so in answer to that question, it depends on the substrate that you're dealing with. If you're in an older home that requires high suction, those can be tough, right? They're creating a lot of volume, and they can, in the byproduct, create a lot of noise. If you've got what we would call just a moderate flow, moderate suction, newer home, newer than 1980, good gravel, you should be able to find a fan that's quieter. If you've had to get into those high suction fans, they make noise reducers. Excuse me, they make mufflers, they make noise reducers that can help with pipe noise. One thing that's interesting about the state of Illinois is they've taken NRPP, which is kind of the national guideline for radon mitigation, and they've superseded it in some ways. One of those ways being that when you run that exhaust pipe up the side of the house, you've actually got to take it up and around the soffit, and you've got to cap, or you've got to terminate 12 inches above the eave. And so we eliminate a lot of pipe noise that way. But in other states, I mean, shoot, you might see them kind of like you see a high efficiency furnace where they just come right outside and make a turn down or make a turn up. These would always make a turn down. But so that can lead to a lot of pipe noise. But even on your high suction fans, the technology's come so far, you don't get a ton of fan noise. It's mostly pipe noise that you deal with.
Hmm. So I'll be completely honest with you. I'm ignorant to all of this. So
Yeah.
I live in an area where I've been told it's not a concern. Where I grew up, it is a concern, but we were too poor to be able to afford it, to
Yeah.
take care
Yeah.
of it anyway.
Yeah.
And so I know very little. So let me just back up a little and tell you, let me summarize and make me sound dumb for a second, and then you fill in the gaps here.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
I have a house, and let's just
Yep.
say I find out that there is radon in my house.
Yep.
What are we doing here? We're pulling air out of the crawl space and spitting it outside, and that's it. I mean, what are
So
we doing here?
are you in an area predominantly on crawl space, very little basements?
So yes, yeah,
Okay.
there are some basements, but I'm in an area where there's swamps and things like
Yeah.
that. So we
Yeah.
don't see a lot of basements. We see
Yeah.
crawl spaces, and we see slabs.
Okay.
How's the building slab?
Yeah, so on a crawl space, we would encapsulate and then depressurize. So we take a 10 mil membrane, we run it out, run it up the walls, 12, 18 inches, somewhere in there. We seal those edges and overlaps with butyl tape and butyl sealant, which if you've never encountered butyl sealant, avoid it at all costs. That is like the most, if you could imagine stepping on like a two-piece wad of double bubble in a hot asphalt parking lot in August, and just imagine what occurs after. That's butyl. I don't know where they make it, how they make it. It's the most awful thing in the world. But we seal all that. So we seal all that to make an airtight seal. And the tape's not bad. The sealant, stay away from. Uh, we make an airtight seal, and then what we do is we bring that suction, we take the fan, plumb it into that crawl space, and then we use a deck, right? So we take a deck, we seal over the top of that. That piping comes down through that deck, and it depressurizes all that area under the encapsulation material. So not only do you encapsulate, you depressurize. And crawl space mitigations are usually very, very effective because there's not a lot of resistance to the system. So in a basement, what you would do is you would get out on the perimeter somewhere, especially in a newer home, because you're going to have a drain tile that you can work with. But you get out in the perimeter, and what you do is you core like a 5-inch hole down through the ground. And then we take an auger bit down into that hole and we excavate what they call a suction pit. And it's anywhere from 5 to 15 gallons, depending on, the substrate material and how hard we think we're going to have to fight to get flow. And then you plumb that fan in, and then that area again. If you've got gravel, it just pulls through that gravel and depressurizes. The technical term for it is sub-slab depressurization.
So you do that, and then the person tests again, and there's no radon in the house. I know this is a dumb question, but I'm just
Never
trying to
zero.
understand.
Never zero. I've never seen. So again, the EPA says the safe level is a 4.0. We guarantee 3.9 or lower. We see a lot of 1s, 1s after mitigation, right? So you mitigate to a very, very low level, but it's never zero. And I asked, so the gentleman that we very first started buy all our supplies from, he was the largest mitigator in upstate Illinois for 20 years. And we asked about it, and it's like, can you ever get it all? And he said, no, it's a gas, right? It's going to find every nook, every cranny, every anything, and it's gonna find its way up through. And so, and it's especially worse in the wintertime. You're very familiar with stack effect.
Yeah.
Right? So as an HVAC guy, you're very familiar with stack effect. In the wintertime, you're putting warm air in, and it's constantly doing this number right here, which creates a suction against the lower parts of the house, and it draws radon gases up. So you get a lot more elevated. And then in the wintertime, you're never opening a window. You're always, closing the door as quickly as possible. So
even the houses that you're encapsulating the crawl and creating that airtight seal, you can't get them to zero.
I've never seen one come back zero. Like I said, we get them to sub 1 all the time, 0.8, 0.7, somewhere in there. And
What
to
the
try
hell,
to
Jake?
explain,
We need to work harder on this.
I hear you. I can't do any more butyl. No more butyl. Yeah. So, yeah, and that the average outdoor level it's like a 1.3, right? So you have so much diffusion in the air. I would say you probably get some coming back in from outside. You know what I mean? To some degree, right? Aeroseal. Nothing is totally airtight. So it comes from somewhere. It's gas.
Huh. So, yeah, that's interesting. Very cool.
Let's see. Ryan said, I see spikes in radon after running water. You very rarely see it in city water. If you're on a well, you can get radon in the water. And so as water, trying to think of the right word, becomes from water to gas, whatever that fancy word is, it can off-put radon in your house. And there are testing devices to test for radon in water, and there are devices that can help filter and mitigate radon in water. So not something we do. We don't see. I've never ever had a call for a testing on water, but it is something that occurs, and it can be mitigated as well.
So if it is in the water, do you just filter the water? Is it like particulates in the water that you can filter out?
From what I've seen, really you're looking for that. As Ryan said, he's on a well. Again, I would be speaking a little bit to something that I'm not totally familiar with because we just don't see it around here. There are systems though. If you use the smart brains of Google, you can find those systems. But yeah, there's definitely a filtration system that can help, especially like when you're showering, right? So you got all the steam, all that goes on, or you're running hot water for the dishes, whatever it is. As that steam occurs, if you got radon in water, it can definitely get in the air as well.
Huh. Interesting. Well, tell me a little bit about your company then. So you obviously know a lot about what you're doing. Tell me maybe the background and the future of your company.
Yeah. So we got started. There's 3 of us. So myself, Jason, and Riley, who does all of our testing. Jason kind of floats in the middle. He's become a Google SEO expert. not willingly at times, but so we kind of equate it to the airplane, right? I'm on the left wing, Riley's on the right wing, and Jason's in the middle, kind of keeping things steering the right way. Jason does all of our accounting, bookkeeping. He'll cover the phones for me when he's available, stuff like that. So Jason's a real estate agent, and I was a contractor. I did a lot of remodeling, and I did work for Jason. And so Jason reached out to me one day. He goes, "Hey, what do you know about radon?" And I was like, enough. I'm in remodeling. I've heard of, general familiarity." And he goes, "Man, every day somebody in our office is looking for a mitigation company and can't find one." He's like, I'm thinking about looking into it. What do you think?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm always open for an adventure, man. Let me know what you need." And so come to find out, the main guy in our market had just up and retired one day. He'd kind of just had enough and was go fishing for the next 20 years, you know what I mean? And so
Nice.
it left a big market gap. And so we rallied the troops and went through all the training, and Illinois is very heavily regulated. And so it was 20 something hours of online coursework, and then there was 150 question state exam, and it's proctored online. I don't know if you ever taken an online proctored exam. Quite an
Oh yeah,
experience.
I took one actually a couple weeks ago, but it's
Yeah.
for something else.
So somebody had somehow stole the exam. And so the proctoring, like when I logged in, I had to do a scan of the room. I had to show her my wrist. I had to show her behind my ears. I mean, I like it. I thought I was taking like an exam to join the CIA. It was unbelievable.
Cavity
Um,
check. Cavity check.
yeah, yes, yeah. Bend over and spread them in the
Spread your
camera.
cheeks. Your kids are
Yeah,
on here, Jake. Your
yeah,
kids are
yeah.
on here.
Oh, he's heard worse. He's 13. He's 13. Whatever he says he hasn't heard, I promise you he has.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's
yeah. So anyway,
pretty
so we
crazy.
got started that way, and then so we went through the exam, and then again, a lot of work generates in real estate radon related. That's kind of how everybody gets started, it seems like. And so with Jason having a ton of connections, it was like the first job came, and then the second job came, and then before long, I wasn't remodeling anymore, and I'm just mitigating every day. 5 days a week, and sometimes on Saturdays. And then my grandma smoked 4 packs a day. Um, uh, yeah, so then we do a lot of inspecting for home inspectors. So a lot of third party home inspection guys. Everybody requests radon. A lot of guys don't want to go get their license, so we kind of third party through a lot of those. So we do a ton of testing, and then again, we get more and more every day. Homeowners, concerned homeowners, talking about, "Hey, my son sold their house and they had to do a radon test. I think I'd like to test mine." So um, it's kind of tough in Illinois, because because we test and mitigate. In Illinois, we have to stay pretty arm's length. If we test something, they consider it a conflict of interest, which is, there's a long story behind it, but it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Like if you go out as an HVAC tech and you go, "Yep, your HVAC needs fixed," I can give you 3 companies to call. Right? It doesn't. But that's kind of in radon. That's kind of what we have to do. If we test something, we give them their report. It's got 3 licensed contractors on it. One of us, number one, being ourselves, obviously. But that's pretty much where we have to leave it. We can't pursue it. Now, Missouri, where I live in Illinois, Missouri, depending on which part of Missouri, I'm anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes into downtown St. Louis, or if I want to get out into West County, 15 minutes. And over there, it's much more lax, and we like Missouri a lot better personally, but Illinois is just, the regulations are crazy. I mean, it's good. You're never going to get the quality of a system that you would from an Illinois job or an Illinois installer, but they find plenty of ways to make it tough. So
I know exactly what you're talking about. We have a county here that I would
yeah,
not work in when I had my business.
yeah,
Um, they would say, "Yeah, we're building a house in this county. We want a new heat and air system." Nope.
yeah. I give you 3 numbers to call.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's interesting though. So you're saying that because it's technically in your best interest to say to the homeowner, "Yes, I do see radon. I need to sell you all this stuff," that they're saying you can't do that. That you're not, we can't allow you to upsell them into something that maybe they actually don't need. I'm not saying you would do that, but it sounds
Yeah,
like that's what they're trying to eliminate.
for sure. And actually where that came from. So State Farm's headquarters is in Bloomington, right? And so Northern Illinois is a hotbed for radon, and so State Farm took a stance that they were going to take radon seriously, and every one of their employees, they in when they existing and when they moved them in, they would test the home for radon and they would mitigate it. Well, come to find out, the guy that the guy that got the bid or got the job, he was fabricating tests and then mitigating homes that didn't need it, and then fabricating post tests to show that he had done a good job. Well, when State Farm caught wind of that, right, they got a ton of money to lobby Illinois Congress and stuff like that, and so State Farm kind of single handedly put a stop to that. And again, I see it, right, like I see how that can happen and why that would happen, but again, it's for a company that does things honestly, and it's almost impossible to manipulate one of those reports anymore because of the standards that these testing companies build the testers to, knowing the regulation. If somebody bumps that monitor over, we get a notification and it kills the test, right? So, there's anti-tamper, there's all these things. And then when that test finishes, you hit a button and it uploads a report 7 pages long showing you everything you can imagine. So it would be pretty hard to fool one these days, but I get it.
So let me ask you, I sent you over some questions, some potential
Yep.
questions. Did you
Yep.
happen to see the one about a goofy invention?
Yeah. So this
Don't
is
don't
my
tell me.
million.
Don't tell me what it
Oh
is
yeah.
yet.
Okay. I got you.
Do you have one?
Yeah. It's not, I don't know if it's
Okay.
goofy. Like you might find it goofy, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
telling
yeah.
you, this is
Hold on.
okay. All
Uh,
right.
I didn't want to go into the segment, so we're gonna
Okay.
take a quick break from the chat, and that's a segment of ours.
All right. I got you.
I call it the Goofy Invention segment. It may not be goofy, but somebody sewed arms on on a blanket one time and called it the Snuggie. Seems kind of goofy, but that person became a millionaire, so it's not that
Telling you.
goofy, right?
Yeah, I'm
So,
telling you.
anyway, we're going to take a quick break from the chat and do this week's Goofy Invention. All right, lay it on me, Jake. What is
All
our
right.
Goofy Invention?
So this could be my $1 million idea. This is being recorded, so if anybody does it, I'm suing for intellectual property rights.
There you go.
Flexible paint roller for painting round objects. When I did when I did building maintenance years and years
Oh,
ago,
okay. I know what you're saying
your
now. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we had to paint the parking bollards all the time. And so when you take you take a paint roller and you rub it up and down a ballard, you get like that much of it. And I thought if you could build a flexible paint roller to kind of wrap and roll, flexible paint roller. That's what I'm going with.
Hold on. I think maybe, just maybe, they've already invented it, Jake.
No. No.
What is this thing, right? Does that thing wrap around? Maybe, I don't know. It
Pipe
says
painter? Son of a bitch. Trying to think.
I gotta tell you, so hopefully she doesn't see this, but my wife has this cousin who told us one night, she's like, I got this great invention, so don't steal my invention, but I'm gonna tell you what it is. We're gonna patent it. And she proceeds to tell us about these her idea for a lawnmower that is robotic like a Roomba. And we're like,
Yeah.
well, we're pretty sure that they already have that. And she goes, yeah, but mine would have headlights. And so all you got to do is take your roller idea
10%.
and
10%.
yeah, and then just add headlights to it. Just add flashlight to the end.
Yep.
So
Headlights. We were at a wedding one time and we were all standing out. I had this big balcony and overlooked this old plantation house, and we're all standing outside cutting up and look across there, and it's like you can see one of them. And I'm like, there ain't no way that's mowing that yard right now. You know what I mean? And so
uh-huh.
sure enough, the longer we sat out there, man, it was a huge yard, and it's just like a Roomba, back and forth. And then like it got tired and it went up to its little docking station, sat there, and here it came. Some of a bitch had headlights on it too, because it got dark, and I'm like, it's mowing in the dark. I think that one was a Husqvarna. They're quite expensive.
Yeah, I think I looked them up one time and it was a little rich for my blood. It's just it's less expensive just to pay somebody to mow your yard at that point. But
Yeah, a lot of $40 mows for one of those.
yeah, yeah. No, I when you were saying your idea, I had no I just Googled it while you were talking
Yeah,
and I was like,
yeah.
oh, so anyway, still a good idea. I tell you, I think it was last week or the week before. My idea was, you've heard of geothermal systems where they bury water loops and then they,
Hmm.
blow across a coil that is fed from that water. So my idea, I think it was last week, was to bury a duct instead. So bury this
Okay.
duct that goes down 30 feet and then the heat transfer through the duct itself would bring back cool air into the house. But of course, everyone said, "Well, what about radon? What about radon?"
Yeah, yeah.
You better make sure it's
We
good and sealed.
Yeah, we deal with that quite a bit on slab homes because a lot of times you'll find that old ductwork buried in gravel, and if the that gravel layer's got radon in it, and that ductwork has started to rust at all, I mean it's like a radon supercharger. You know what I mean? And you'll never, with a radon, an inline radon fan, you'll never pull enough suction to counteract duct suction or duct flow. And so it's tough, you know what I mean? And I think, I don't, the only way to combat that would be reroute your duct work, or I don't, how big of a gap will Aero seal?
Oh, they claim that it'll seal just about any size gap as long as you run it long enough. So
You
because
know
it
what's funny?
builds on itself, but I
Yeah.
don't really know.
What's funny is that when we very first started, we somehow got connected to a salesman from, it was the other Aero Barrier, maybe the one for sealing the
Wow.
air envelope. Yeah, so there's a whole nother division of that called Aero Barrier.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. We showed it on one of our shows one night. Yep.
yeah, and so they do, and I guess with the kind of green push, environmental push, ACH turnovers is becoming more and more a thing. And so I think if I remember when we were kind of looking into that, they were moving the minimum from 3 to 5, or from 5 to 3, one of the two. They were making it, I guess the average amount of times that all the air in your house turns over is 5 in a day or something like
Hmm.
that. And they
Yep.
were moving it on new construction to 3. And we just never really got any traction with it. It was a huge investment up front, and just like I said, never really kind of caught traction, and we got so busy with radon. So um, I think our next move we're looking in right now is mold testing. That's something that more and more people are looking into now. Just indoor air quality in general is something that's becoming more and more prevalent. So that's kind of where we're headed now. We're looking into get into mold testing next, and then the guys at April Air are just drooling, trying to get us to kind of get on board with a lot of their products and stuff like that. So they keep telling us, the hardest part is to get into the house, and then, from there you kind of got your foot in or whatever. But ton of products out there. But right now, man, radon's enough right now.
Can I just say this is the third time that April Air has come out? You guys need to send Jake a check. You're not a
Yeah,
sponsor of our show.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
send this guy at least a free Radon fan, something. He's
Something.
showing y'all some love. I've
Yeah,
actually talked to
something.
them about being a sponsor, and I've never been able to talk to the decision maker. So
I
I'm
don't. The
always
guy that
talking.
I talked to today sounded pretty important, but they all do. So
They all do.
I
That's
was, yeah, I was really curious. You know, again, we started with those festive fans, right? And I don't know what was your go-to system brand when you were installing?
you talking about heating and air?
Yeah.
We were a Daikin dealer.
Okay. All right. So with Daikin, you know the ins, the outs, the ups, the downs. You know what they're capable of. You know when they're undersized, oversized, things like that. And so Radon for us, the Festa brand was the same way. I knew
Ah,
exactly what all those fans were capable of and what they would and wouldn't do. And so when we kind of, as we're making this transition, I had to call. I go, look, I need to know everything about this fan because I don't want to get into a trouble situation and be wondering, is it the fan? Is it the system? What exactly is it? And so 30 minutes later, he had me about any information I wanted to know on April Air's line of radon fans. But
I had a similar experience when we first started selling Daikin at my company. Daikin is famous for naming things American words, English words, but then they put an A at the end of it. So it'll
okay,
be the Atmosphera, the Otera, so that,
okay, yeah, yeah,
and so the Aurora is one of their products. And so I didn't know what any of that meant, and it took me a little bit to learn, what was what on that front. But
yeah.
it
What
was
was
just a
was
marketing.
I got the A was just totally marketing, had nothing to do with model or anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they do it. I don't even know if everyone at Daikin knows why they do that.
Yeah. There's
But it
some guy in
is.
a back office somewhere that's like, I'll tell you what'll work. This will get them. They put an A on the end.
It probably saves them from all the, because everybody's looking to sue somebody these days, and they are the biggest
Yeah.
and best at what they do, and they're the largest in the world. So I'm sure that they've got to be careful in naming things, certain things, especially
Yeah.
if the parent company is in Japan. They're just, that's what we see with a lot of the mini splits that are imported into our country from China. They'll just stick any old American word on it now, and it's the same
Yeah.
stuff, but it's just got a different sticker. They'll just,
Yeah.
they'll call it, I don't know. You go on Amazon and you can just look up mini splits, and there's all these American words. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same equipment, but it's just all these different American words that they're attaching to it.
Yeah, that's
So
it's interesting about like radon fans. When I called the guy today, I kind of called a little bit snobby to Festa, right? Like because in my mind we were using the best, you know what I mean? And so I said, look, man, Festa's this, that, and the other. And the guy goes, man, I don't want to break your heart, but every one of them fans comes out of one of two places, Germany or France, and everybody puts their own casing around them. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. So it's probably that way with a lot of things. And actually, he was telling me, interestingly enough, there's a federal regulation on UL listings now that has been updated, and one of those manufacturers already meets the requirement, and the other one doesn't. So the fan world's getting ready to get, I don't know, pretty tight. I don't know. We just ordered a pallet of each one of their fans, so I think we're good for a while. But yeah, it was like I said, it's interesting. The world's a lot bigger than the 60 miles around your house sometimes. So
yeah, yep, yep. So a couple of our folks in the chat have been asking similar questions, and that has to do with ventilation. Do you guys do any of that? ERVs, HRVs, or any sort of fresh air?
So right now we found that we can effectively mitigate with subslab depressurization at a cost that's much, much more effective than ERVs, HRVs, things like that. Um, those and then you talk power consumption, conditioned air loss, all those things. I mean, our standard system installation right now on a newer home is $1,100. So I haven't priced an ERV or HRV in quite a while since we kind of got through training, because they train you on all those things. But for 1,100, right, the average cost of running one of those fans is $60 a year, and the conditioned air loss is minimal. So pricing wise, those HRVs come in handy when you have things like unserviceable crawl spaces. So like crawl spaces that are just you can't safely or effectively get in there and do much. Those ERVs can be good. Removing air and displacing with fresh, and that diffusion process of air can be effective. As again, we almost look at it as a last resort. If I'm stumped, right, we might start looking that way. But mitigation, sub-slab depressurization is so cost effective and user friendly that we haven't needed it so far.
Do you know a Chris Carter? He said, "Keep spitting those golden nuggets." I don't know.
Nah,
Nah, he's just agreeing with you. He feels like he
yeah,
knows you.
yeah,
I
yeah, that's right.
I didn't know if that was a friend of yours or not. I
No, I'm a familiar face.
I tell you, if you guys are getting into indoor air quality, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We were talking about how a lot of folks they're going in and they are encapsulating crawls and they're making homes tighter and tighter, but they are not doing any form of ventilation. and it's a huge concern because of VOCs is the main thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how much crawl space encapsulations you guys do, but I feel like the ventilation is not looked at enough, you know.
Yeah, we get a ton of more than more than I would like to do. You know, I mean, we did one. Trying to think. So Monday we opened the week with a crawl space, and it was the first one. It was like newer, probably had 3 foot of depth, clean concrete walls, and 1,500 square foot. Me and a helper were in and out, full system, 6 hours.
Wow.
Rarely, right? Like most of them are just someplace that is you'd never want to be in your life. They're tiny, they're belly crawls, they're awful, right? And so that was something that we looked into or we see all the time. Like even in that newer crawl space, I was doing something and I looked up and you could see mold forming on a couple of the floor joists, you know what I mean? Because it had 2 glass hoppers and some vent that has never probably worked, right? And so even though we're coming up 12 inches up the wall and then depressurizing under the membrane, you've still got that airspace in there that you've got uh, temperature change up and down, seasonal change. You're introducing an air inconsistent with the ambient air, and so you've got all those things. And I think most people, it's kind of that out of sight, out of mind. They just hope it's not that bad down there. So we're excited to kind of explore indoor air quality. For me, I'm always interested in things that make a difference. I don't want to. I don't want to go in and go, you need A, B, C, and D. We've got all these great, awesome things, and these are going to change your life. You know what I mean? So, right. Radon's tough sometimes because you can't see it, smell it, or taste it. But you can test for it, right? And we know that it's the second leading cause of lung cancer, second only to smoking. There's medical proof of lung tissue damage and all these things, and so you kind of walk away from a mitigation going, yeah, you increase the air quality in somebody's home. You feel good about that. And so with all these other indoor air quality options that we're looking at now, the air purifiers, duct cleaning, things like that make a difference in people's lives. That's something I'm always interested in. So
Absolutely. It is fulfilling, especially if you have. I remember years ago, I had a homeowner that, I mean, he was just telling me that all the breathing issues he was having, and we put a indoor air. I don't want to say which one because everybody will always focus in on that. But we installed an indoor air quality product, and to hear him say like a month later how much better he feels,
yeah,
like not just you fix the issue, but I just feel better on a daily basis. And the only thing he could think of was that we
yeah.
had installed that product. So it is pretty fulfilling at times.
We did one time, and I don't think that this person's symptoms were radon related, but in Illinois, if you have an open sump pit, you have to seal it. So we use a few different things, and you use grommets and all those things to leave the sump still operational. But we sealed it as a part of our system, and then the guy called and he goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know, like that sump is under our bedroom, and I've woken up with a headache every day since we've lived here, and today was the first day I didn't." So something
Wow.
about just probably the general funk that was collected in that sump pit, you know what I mean? And so I was amazed when we started to explore the indoor air quality thing, the monitors and the testing devices they have now, and they were showing us kind of some of the ones that they're using. And I mean, they spit out CO2, dander, dust. There's like 7 or 8 different things that within 20 minutes of this thing kind of grabbing and doing a grab sample, it can tell you what's in the air. And so, I mean, much like people never thought about radon until now, and probably even myself, it's just something you don't think about, man. You got work and you got kids and you got a job and you got all these things, and it's like maybe the air in my house is the reason I've got a headache or feel like I've had a sinus infection for 6 months, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Francisco's asking questions about which brands are best. My answer is always the same, Francisco, and that is find a good contractor and go with whoever that contractor is that gives you the warm fuzzies, go with the brand that they like and will stand behind. And if it's the same contractor offering 2 brands and they don't care which one, I would maybe consider looking for another contractor. I would want to find a contractor that's drinking the Kool-Aid for one brand, and they will get on their soapbox It's just one of my pet peeves. If you're just, to me, it's like Ford or Chevrolet. Tell me which one's better, why you think it's better, and that's who I'm gonna buy my next heat and air system from, because they will stand behind that brand. They're gonna be taking care of me for years to come. So that's my answer to that question. Um, your son has an interesting question, and I think it's a pretty good question. And that is, if you can't smell it, taste it, see it, any of that, how did they find out about this stuff if it's so horrible for us?
Yeah, so the original studies on radon came from, they call them the minor studies. And they did studies on miners and uranium mines and things like that, and people that were the miners that were always underground, and they started to track their like lifespan and how they were affected by being underground. And then the next set of studies that came out were the Bear 4, BEIER 4. And that's when they started to explore the health effects of like non-smokers, right? So it's kind of a little more rudimentary back then. It's like, okay, you got lung cancer, but you don't smoke. Where could we, and so, and then over time, but I mean, there's been charcoal samples. So like, if you live in an area, say you can't afford, we charge 150 for a 48-hour exposure. Radon monitor is, 150. Almost any county health department, if you called and asked them to send you a charcoal test, they'll send you one for free. So, and you hang those in an area around the house, and they usually, those are a little longer. Those are usually like 7 to 9 days, I think. And then they'll come pre-postage, everything ready to go. You mail it off to a lab and they send you back the results. So there's a ton of so there's photosynthesis testing where they put air samples into a tube and they electrify the tube, and that you can get radon levels from that. I mean, there's a ton of, we're fortunate that we buy the $800 monitor and let it do its thing, but there's a ton of different tests and a lot more rudimentary stuff out there that a lot of people still, I mean, a ton of people still use charcoal samples because they're so much more cost effective. So
I have a little ADD, and whenever you keep doing this, I keep seeing this symbol pop up.
oh,
And
is that, am I causing that?
yeah, you're the one that's doing that. So do this right here for me. Let's see it. Do both. Is it gonna do it? No. There it is. Let's go.
Ah.
Now do this. Is it gonna
Wait.
do it? There we go.
Oh.
There we go.
So it's something I'm doing here. Maybe this.
Yeah. Whenever you're doing this right here, your phone's picking up. See, I'm on a
Gotcha.
desktop, so it's not doing it for me. But whenever
Gotcha,
you're
gotcha.
doing, your phone's picking it up. So that's
That's
pretty
funny.
funny.
I thought somebody was like liking what I was saying. I'm like, oh yeah. It's
Yeah.
just liking myself.
Sorry, I ruined it for you. I'm sorry.
Just liking myself, man. Like, nobody's gonna support you. Support yourself, man.
I think we've got the best heat and air show on the internet with all the special effects that we've got
Yeah,
going on in your background.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
Very cool. So, let me ask you this. So, grandma, your grandma calls you tomorrow and says, you know, I'm experiencing fill in blank symptom of some kind.
Yep.
What's the next step? Is it calling you? Is it calling a company to come test, or
Yeah,
what does that
testing
look
is
like?
yeah, testing's always the first step. I always tell people, we'll have people that are like, hey, I heard about it and I want a system. Like, I don't even care about a test. And I'll still recommend that people test just so they know the starting levels and the finishing levels, just so they know what's going on. But yeah, a test is the first step. Again, we're pretty reasonable in our pricing on testing. The St. Louis market is pretty competitive, and so I've heard of people charging up to $300. We're 150, so we're pretty. I mean, to know, right? It's probably one of the cheaper tests you can have done in your home. But again, if like you're concerned about it and you don't have the money for that, again, almost any county health department will send you out a charcoal test that you can use and then send off and get the results of the radon levels inside your house. So, ton of cost effective ways, or buy a home monitor. I mean, I tell people a lot too. People ask me like, hey, how do I know the levels now that you've mitigated? Because testing is not something that we just do automatically. We've got to deploy and retrieve monitors and all that. So we offer it to everybody, and people ask like, what would you do? I say all the time, like contrary to my own business benefit, I would, if it was me, I would buy a home monitor because you can get one. We've got an affiliate discount through EcoSense. You can get one for what we charge to do an in-home test, and then you always have the monitor. And then there's some business tactic behind that as well because usually they share the monitor with everybody. But again, testing's the only way to know. I mean, and it's so simple. It's cost effective. Obviously, I'd recommend everybody at least test once, even if it's a charcoal, or call a local mitigation testing contractor and have a test done.
Yeah. So would you get a second opinion if grandma calls somebody and they say, "Oh yeah, you've got radon it. We need to get in here and we need some money from you."
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a little more caution to the like really high levels, right? So I think the highest one we've done was an old single story 1,200 square footer, and it was at a 27. Um, that's probably the highest that we've mitigated. If somebody came in and goes, "Oh my God, you're at a 50," right? I'm gonna, let me get a second opinion. But again, it's so prevalent everywhere that if somebody told me, "Hey, it's a 4 and 8," between 4 and 8 is a number that we see a bunch of. And if anybody felt uncomfortable with, a contractor that gave them a test result, get a charcoal test. Even if you don't get them from the counter, you can order them on Amazon. You know what I mean? Drop ship you one, it's, I don't know, $10 probably. We buy them in bulk, so we get a lot better price on them. But we actually on all of our, we leave a charcoal test behind unless they're doing a retest for some other reason. But a lot of times on real estate transactions, they need the results a lot quicker, so they're willing to pay for a 48-hour test. But we have charcoals that we leave behind on most of our jobs.
I'm looking at them on Amazon.
Yeah.
You do get really good pricing. You are buying them in bulk because I don't see them for $10. It looks like about $30 is
I
about.
would, yeah.
Unless maybe I'm just not looking up the right one, but
Look
I'm going to
up
put this in the chat so you guys can get
look up
that. If
charcoal radon test.
yeah, this one says, yeah, this is a charcoal radon. There's one for 25, I think, but it didn't have as good of reviews, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, are you
All
when
right.
you buy things online, do you look at reviews or do
I
do
like
you
so with Amazon, like you get like people that have actually used like pictures of them in use. You know what I mean? That's one thing, and I'm sure you experienced that in business too. Like we fought so hard to get them. They're hard to get. Google reviews, man. Like you ask people like, "Hey, would you mind?" "Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, as soon as you guys are done." And just nothing. We still have them. We got these tab cards. And so you'd show it to people, and I ask people all the time, "Hey, would you do me a favor?" And yeah, no problem. What's up? You got your phone on you? It's like just, and I'd always be like, "Hey, I just got this. Would you help me try it?" And they tap it, and I mean, I'd watch it come to their phone, and all they'd have to do is leave the review, man, and then you'd leave and just nothing. And so it's so hard, and it's
interesting?
like one bad review, what I mean? It's just, that's the world we live in anymore. So, um, yeah, we've worked pretty hard. I think we're up to 21, and we fought hard for.
Yeah, I was in business for 11 years almost. And let me see if we're still showing up on seeing if we're still showing up over here. So the new company might have changed. No, they're still there. So it took us 11 years to get 255 Google
Yeah,
reviews.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, we're on that pace.
you're on that pace. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're right there. We used to, so we transitioned a lot of our day-to-day business into a CRM, Go High Level. I don't know if you're familiar with Go High Level at all, but basically it tracks incoming calls through Google and all these things and creates leads and schedules jobs, notifies them that we're on the way, this, that, and the other. And it, for a while there, it was better than I was at getting a Google review. And I don't know if it's just because of that texting sequence that it did. You know, it would say, "Hey, we're on the way," or actually, it'd start the day before. It'd say, "Tomorrow's your mitigation." Then it'd say, "Hey, you know, today's your mitigation. We're on the way." And then at the end, it would hit them for a Google review. And there for a while, like this is awesome. This you know, it's way better than I am. And then now they've kind of curtailed off just a little bit, but um, yeah, I mean they're a vital part of business, man, and you know we work hard to take care of people and do the right thing. But
Well, let's talk after the show. I think I've got a few things that might help you on that too.
yeah, we'd love
Um,
to.
let's see. I thought Ryan had a good question here. Now, I know my answer to this question is super easy. My answer is I never had to worry about any of this stuff, so I didn't care. But you're in houses where they're failing at time, right? I mean,
Yeah,
these houses are
known high
failing the
levels. Yeah.
radon test. Are you putting some fresh air fans in there before you even start work? And maybe, and if not, should you be?
Yeah, I mean, probably. So the one I can think of the most was that very small old block house where I knew it was a 27. The thing, like, so most of the time when we go in, we've got doors open, we're coming in and out with tools, we've got whatever the case may be, you know. So there's actually a calculation you have to keep it on file with the state of Illinois called your worker exposure limit. And so there's a calculation which is basically how high were the levels, how long were you exposed, and then there's a formula that you use. And so the maximum is 30 WML per month, right? And you would have to be like that house in a 27, 4 days, you know, probably 10 days a month for that to kind of all catch up to you. It's kind of funny. I walked into a house one time and this guy was, his house was really high, and he was, I mean, over the top concerned, and he bought the house and then tested and he wouldn't move in and he needed us there yesterday. And you know, so we walk in and he tries to hand me a mask, and I'm like, is it N95, you know? And I'm like, I said, that's okay. He goes, I don't know why you wouldn't wear a mask. He said, you know, these levels are so high. And I go, well, uh I said, that's an N95. That's a particulate mask. I said, that's doing nothing to stop the radon, brother. And he like looks at me. He's like, okay, I'm gonna leave. And um, so yeah, you know, we don't get into, again, we have windows and doors open naturally, just kind of as a part of our work process, anyways. But we do keep track of exposure rates, length of time, all those things. And so far, we haven't hit that level where we have to say, hey, we can't do any more radon this month. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, very cool. Well, let's do this. So if you're in the chat, Jake, I've got one more question to ask
Yeah.
you. So don't leave if you're here. Um, I'm speaking to everyone in the chat. But if you are in the chat, do us a favor as we wrap up this show tonight. And that is, if you know, we all know that there's some bad apples out there, right? There's some bad companies. There's some, ones that make us all look bad. If you know a good heating and air, electrical, plumbing, or radon mitigation company, drop their name and where they're located in the chat. Let's show some love to the good ones. And you never know, when if somebody in your area sees your comment, you might be able to show that company more than some love and send some business their way. That said, uh, let me ask you this, Jake. So if you are giving advice to somebody, right? Somebody is, they're concerned whether they have tested positive, or I don't know what the verbiage is. They've tested correctly or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever.
Tested
Radon
above the action level, we call it. EPA
above the
says
action level.
4.0 is action level, so that's when they urge you to mitigate. So if you're above
Okay.
the action level,
What's the biggest piece of advice you're giving them? It's obviously, it sounds like you're saying don't freak out. Maybe you don't need to freak out right away, but
yeah.
we're going to take action. What's the big piece of advice here?
Yeah, so yeah, right. You're not going to smoke a cigarette and keel over dead tomorrow, right? We're looking for long term exposure is the killer in terms of radon. Always test, right? Just get a test, a charcoal, whatever the case may be. Get a test. Start with a test. If you have, we have people ask us sometimes like, "Hey, I know I've tested high. I just don't have the money right now. Like, what can I do?" If that's where you're at today, Crack a window, right? It's not a long-term fix. Again, conditioned air loss, all those things are bad. If it's the summertime and you can afford to crack a window, if you've got an open sump pit, find a way to seal it off. If you've got big floor cracks or control joints in your basement, seal them, caulk them, get them airtight as possible until you can afford to do a mitigation. But we tell everybody start with a test. That's the way to go.
Good enough. I've got a couple announcements before we let everyone go here, and I'm having trouble finding it right this second. But if you search for the HVAC Guide live show, so let me see if I can get it this way. We are moving the show, guys. So you guys, especially those of you that join us every week, we're going to be moving the show to its own channel. Here it is. And there's a couple of reasons for that. But we can get into that later. We are moving the show for the next couple weeks. We're gonna actually stream to this channel and the new channel at the same time, and then after a couple weeks we will completely switch. I just put a link to the new show channel in the chat. Make sure you subscribe to that new channel, and we're going to move everything over to there as far as the show goes. And so if you don't want to miss us, you want to, make sure you're here, make sure you subscribe to that new channel. Cause again, in 2 weeks, I won't be popping up here on this channel anymore. The channel will still be alive. It'll still be here, but we won't be broadcasting live on this channel anymore. We're still going to do the show every Tuesday on the new channel. So I think I've beat that dead horse enough. New channel, old channel, new channel, and then the other thing I wanted to tell you guys is I have the biggest podcaster for HVAC as a guest. If you've ever heard of the HVAC Uncensored podcast, it's the biggest one. He's going to be our guest next week. So make sure you're here next week. Jake, don't go anywhere. We're going to wrap up with that. You guys that are joining us, make sure that you're here. Make sure you subscribe to the new channel. Make sure you're here next week. We're here every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Find out what that time is in your area. In the meantime, make it a great week. Take care.